Welcome to Foundations with Larisa Hovannisian, an unfiltered podcast where I explore the foundational principles of creators, entrepreneurs, scientists, public figures, and all around awesome people who make things happen. Welcome back to Foundations with Larisa Hovannisian. Today's guest is Tatevik Revazian, aviation executive, trailblazer, and one of the most fearless voices redefining leadership in Armenia and beyond. As the former chair of Armenia's Civil Aviation Committee and the founder of our country's first low-cost airline, Tatevik has broken barriers not only in a male-dominated industry, but also in systems resistant to change. Her work has been fueled by courage, clarity, and a deep belief in action over fear. In today's conversation, we'll explore the foundations of Tatevik's bold decision-making, what it really means to lead with both strength and grace, and how she's stayed grounded while consistently challenging the status quo. Thanks so much for joining me today, Tatevik.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of yours. I've watched you do some really amazing things. I've watched you deal with a lot of praise, but a lot of super unnecessary criticism and feedback. A lot of it I felt was driven by, perceptions of women being in your kind of position. So I'm just really excited to have an honest, authentic conversation today, unfiltered. And really my podcast is about bringing people who've done really great things in their lives into this space and hopefully motivating, inspiring people to do the thing that they've been putting off for a while, but also asking you questions about how you handled it, both emotionally and psychologically, because a lot of these things are not easy. You're also a mom of two young kids, and a lot of what you were accomplishing, you were, professionally, you were also navigating early parenthood. So I'm just really excited to have you here. I'm excited to ask you these questions. And I guess my first question to you, just so we build the context for our audience, is where are you actually from? Because you're Armenian, clearly. I just found out that you have some Russian blood in you, but I know you grew up in Denmark. Can you tell us a little bit about your early life and, where it all started and how you ended up coming back to Armenia?
Of course. So basically, I was born in Armenia, but at age 5, my family decided to move to Denmark. So back in 93, when a lot of people left the country. So I feel I'm a bit of a weirdo because I'm not considered a diaspora as such, or some people consider me a diaspora, but locals consider me local. So that has been quite interesting to navigate, because when you're a diaspora and let's say you speak Armenian, you're praised for that. Oh, your Armenian is so good, because there is an expectation that it's a big achievement that you learned Armenian. But when you're considered local but growing up somewhere else, suddenly they're like, oh, but why is your Armenian challenged? Why are you're supposed to speak perfectly? So that was a big challenge for me growing up. So I spent most of my life, obviously, in Denmark. I got educated in Denmark. And actually quite in a non-Armenian environment. So all my friends growing up were Danish. I did not have much interaction with Armenians. So I guess the connection to our culture was kept inside our home. That was transferred from my parents. And at some point when I was around high school, university age, I got even more interested, and I understood that I do want to explore our culture. Also as a method to get to know my parents better, because we did have some
cultural
disagreements.
differences.
Exactly, where we didn't really understand each other. So I thought that could be an interesting way to explore that. So I did Birthright while I was a student. So I spent 4 months in Armenia, and that was the first experience of connecting with Armenia without my parents. without coming on these visits and just going and seeing family, but actually creating friendships. And that's where I realized that being Armenian is not one defined way, because I met Armenians from, I don't know, Brazil, Argentina, from Europe, from Asia as well. So you just learn that we're so different, and yet we have some similarities. That was quite interesting.
Did you travel to Armenia at all with your family when you were growing up in Denmark?
At an older age, I think I was 20 the first time.
Okay.
I came after we had moved.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we came every year.
And so your Armenian and everything you knew about Armenia or being Armenian was all just at home?
Yes. And actually, to correct, the first time I visited, I was 14, but then we had a very big gap between, and then the next time was 20 years old.
And so did you feel Armenian, or like how did you feel in Denmark?
Yeah.
Are you are you Danish? Were you Danish?
In Denmark, I feel Armenian. In Armenia, I feel Danish.
Yeah, there's this concept called third culture kids.
Yeah.
And it's like the minute you leave for an extensive period of time, you just never, ever fit fully again anywhere. Whether it's in your new country, in your old country, you're just kind of your own thing.
Yeah,
you know.
I actually have a friend who developed this concept called in-betweener, and that's exactly that, when you don't fully fit anywhere. And that has its advantages as well as disadvantages, obviously.
So what was like something you felt like didn't allow you to fully fit in Denmark?
I think growing up, obviously, I had more strict parents in the sense Danish kids from a very young age go out, drink, come home whenever they want to. So I really had to navigate that, balance that. So not completely write it off, because then I wouldn't be part of the culture and I wouldn't have Danish friends, but also keep it at a respectful level for that to be accepted inside the family as well. So somehow I managed to keep both
you negotiated.
Sides satisfied. Yeah. Yeah, you learn to negotiate quite well.
Uh-huh. And then you moved here first time with birthright, and how old were you when you did that?
That was back in 2010.
2010.
Yeah.
Okay, so we won't talk about age then, not to date ourselves. But and when you got here and you had an extensive experience, I mean, birthright is an immersion experience, and I know people have incredible first time for many, opportunities here where they actually feel like they're Armenian, or they're learning to, more about who they are. What was that like for you? Like, what did you feel after an extensive gap too? It seems like you you came here once in a while.
It was during birthright that I realized that I will move to Armenia at some point in life. And I realized that anything I'm going to do in life has to somehow be connected to Armenia. Whether I stay in Denmark and I work on projects, there needs to be some relation to Armenia for me to feel some type of satisfaction or purpose in life. And talking about purpose, I think this is one of the biggest differences between Denmark and Armenia, because in Denmark, everything works. There's this almost perfect society.
You mean the electricity doesn't get shut off?
Actually, sometimes it does. I was quite surprised. But no, not that often. There's water, there's electricity always. And processes, systems work most of the time. And that also means that if you're a person who likes to build things and fix broken things, you don't really get that much space to do that in Denmark. So you don't have that bigger purpose or bigger impact of staying there and working there. So that's the big difference with Armenia. There's so many broken things here. You can
just
fix.
Pick.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
a menu.
Yeah, so I feel Denmark has reached a point of peak and maybe towards stagnation.
Okay.
Whereas Armenia is starting its
ascend to the peak.
Yes, exactly.
We've got a long way to go.
That's an exciting time to be part of writing Armenia's history, basically.
So you feel like you're the builder then?
Yes, for
Okay.
sure.
And I've also talked a little bit about this to some people who complain about the lack of systems, the lack of processes, the lack of everything you just said. And I think that those are very valid questions and concerns to have if you're someone who wants those things or expects those things, and does not get excited about the prospect of trying to fix something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I always say I think this is the perfect country and the perfect moment in history for builders and creators and people who are like actually excited about creating something from scratch or fixing something, or it's for like the moment in time now for Armenia are for the builders. It's not for the folks who look for something else, I think. And so, often there's this pressure sometimes that I feel like we put on diasporans to move back. And I would love for as many people, obviously, to come to Armenia and to live in Armenia and to raise their kids here. But I also understand that Armenia is not for everyone's tastes right now. It's for a very particular type of person who is excited about the possibilities here. And so you're definitely 100% one of those people. For me, that's how I've always seen you. And, I think your journey in Armenia has been very interesting to me, just, from an outside perspective of being in an industry that is totally archaic in so many ways and so untapped, right? Mm-hmm. And then you're this young, woman who is kind of from here but is not from here, and you just trailblaze your way and disrupt the industry very gracefully, very like authentically. You didn't become something you're not. You were just who you are.
Maybe because I didn't stay too long. I stayed for 4 years. I had a feeling if I had stayed
4 years is long.
It is long. But I think people staying for, I don't know, 10, 15 years, even if they try to stay the same, the system will get to them at some point.
Yeah, but I think you stayed you stayed in the most difficult years. I mean, that transition was very tough because you opened a door and there was all this stuff that came out. And so like my question is, how was that your priority always? Did you know when you were doing Birthright or the next things that you were planning for your move here in Armenia, like was that where you were going to go? Was that always where your brain was, or
Not at all.
No? Okay.
Not at all. I didn't even want that job, to be honest, when I was offered it. As I knew I wanted anything I do in life to be connected with Armenia. And from the moment I realized that aviation is my passion, obviously I understood that there will be a connection between aviation and Armenia. And already as a student, I was negotiating with Norwegian to try to get flights to Yerevan, and I got the airport CEO to fly to Oslo. I got the head of the air transport department of the Civil Aviation Authority to travel to Oslo to participate in these negotiations. And that was just when I was a student. So obviously I knew that I did want to improve connectivity for Armenia, and I was proactively seeking those type of opportunities. But no, I did not see that happening as part of the government or actually leading the Civil Aviation Authority. And when I was called in for a meeting, I did not know it was an interview. I was called in to share my vision for Armenia and how we could make Armenia more connected to the world. So I shared my ideas and gave them concrete tools that they could need. And I told them as well that I was ready at any point in time, pro bono, to support this process. And then at the end of the meeting, the vice prime minister looked at me and he was like, whatever you just told me, I don't want anyone else to do it. I want you to do it. Mm-hmm. And that's where the shock came, because I did not want to work in any government. I'm not talking about the Armenian government. I did not want to work
not
for
a
the
sector
Danish
you're in.
government. Understanding that the type of person I am, we just don't fit.
Because you're a disruptor, you're a builder, you're an innovator, and any government is ultimately a bureaucracy. And I hear you on that because people think that that's like where I want to go in life. But
maybe you'll end up there without knowing.
I really don't. I cannot imagine, because if you're given a green light to do what you want to do and disrupt and dismantle and build it all over again, maybe. But if it's just like come and be like a technocrat, that's not my thing. But I do admire and respect technocrats because they are very important and they make the system work. But it's never been my thing. So I hear you. I totally understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, and at that stage as well, I had just moved to Armenia 11 months earlier. Felt that I'd reached my dream in terms of being able to move to Armenia and having a job in Silicon Valley in aviation with a salary 10 times more than what was offered to me in the Civil Aviation Authority. I was traveling the world. I was really, really enjoying life. So I kind of reached my peak, and then they come in and they're like, no, drop all that and go into a government, an unknown, where I had no idea what I was going into, to be honest. I had no idea. And if I knew what would take place, I would probably have said no. Because who would be, knowing that a war would happen and you would need to be responsible of keeping civilian aircraft safe in your airspace, COVID that just shut down the whole world, the blacklist of our airlines into Europe. We lost an aircraft to Iran, had to get it out of Iran again. If somebody listed those things to me during the interview, and are you up for this? Mm-hmm. I'd probably be like, no, I like my job in the Silicon Valley-based company, paying 10 times more and not giving me all this headache.
Yeah. But I think there was a part of you that answered a patriotic call. And I think it's so hard. It's you did what you thought was right in the moment. And I think a lot of it was intrinsic and it wasn't,
correct.
It wasn't rational, maybe.
And that's exactly what the Vice Prime Minister did during this meeting. When I said, no, this is not for me, I was even suggesting him names of other people that he could hire for the job. And the card he played was exactly that. He was like, why did you move to Armenia? I was like, well, I want to develop the aviation industry.
Who's his vice minister? I need to think back to who it was.
It was Tigran Avinian. Yeah, he was the vice prime minister at that time.
Him and I think alike then.
Yeah, and he was like, okay, so you moved to Armenia for that. So right now I'm offering you the number one opportunity to have that impact on Armenia. Like, you can't say no. And he was like, I could see that.
Yeah, I know those were really hard years. I can imagine. I mean, I can't imagine because I don't think anyone really knows what you went through, and a lot of it is something.
Well, you had your share too.
We all had our share, but I think, there's a lot of things that we will never, ever know because you cannot talk about it and the government can't talk about it. And there were a lot of sacrifices made and sleepless nights and trying to protect your nation and your people. And I just want to say thank you to you on behalf of all of us for doing that job.
Thank you as well.
Yeah.
I followed you during those days.
Yeah, it was rough. It was really rough. And it continues, I think, to be rough in many ways because to me it hasn't ended. It's ongoing. And, I always talk about the fact that it's always been a hybrid war that I think partially we've been unaware of for many decades. And then there was an actual war that wasn't had a real side to it. Mm-hmm. But the hybrid war continued during that time, and is definitely something that I think we all find ourselves in currently. And even for me, like I'm in the social impact sector, I'm in education. The stuff that we are pressured to do or not do or say or not say by the government of Azerbaijan is just insane. And it's such a violation of freedom and rights, and such an attempt to revise history and to erase lived experience of a recent lived experience of our people. So I think we're all still dealing with it in many ways, but
to give a positive view as well, because in the middle of all this negativity, there is also some positive stories.
Yes.
So when I said that we're responsible of keeping civilian aircraft safe, we were not able to do that alone, because at the end of the day, Azerbaijan is a neighboring state, and you need to coordinate flights between each other to keep the aircraft safe. So that coordination worked very, very well.
Wow, that's great.
On both sides, because there was willingness to talk to each other and do the necessary coordination.
Do those glimpses give you a different sense of like what's possible between our two countries?
I think it does. Yeah, because if we could make that happen, we can do that in other sectors as well. And at some point, we need to do that. I mean, the reason Denmark reached its peak is also because the wars ended in Scandinavia. So if those countries who have experienced wars as well, at some point, have reached a level where they can joke with each other in terms of "I hate the Swedes" type of thing, but it's not more than that. So that's really what I'm hoping for Armenia and Azerbaijan as well at some point when both sides are ready for it. And it is something, I don't think we have a choice, to be honest. We need to learn to live with each other. And I am very, very thankful that I had the experience of actually seeing something work with them.
That is refreshing to hear, definitely. Do you feel like what you just expressed is something that is possible to comprehend by like majority of society in Armenia?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know I can get criticized for saying these things, but I think it's important that we do raise positive stories as well.
And there are a lot of positive stories, I think, not on a governmental level, clearly in Azerbaijan, but, just I think a lot of the positivity that I've seen is just like human to human, and a lot of people that, I know through work or have followed over the years are civilian individual people who are really believe in a different future between our two countries, who unfortunately are being jailed and arrested and, pressured in many different difficult ways. But I think that as long as these people exist and as long as that hope is there, I agree. I mean, my grandfather is originally from Baku and grew up between Baku and Artsakh as a child and then as a young man. And a lot of what he writes about is about the fact that we were, as people, very close at some point. And unfortunately, the ruling regime in Azerbaijan kind of shifted, the narrative in many ways and kind of weaponized the two nations against each other. And I'm not saying that we didn't do some of that on our side either. I think it was it's always a two-way sort of equation.
I think it's more than two-way.
Yeah.
I think there are
and
other powers that are influencing our relationship as well.
Exactly. Yeah. But ultimately, if we just look like person to person, human to human, there's such a shared history there. And when I look at the diaspora, for example, in Russia, I mean, those lines are blurred even further. because we're all sort of one type of people in Russia. We're the Kafkazцы, the actual Caucasians, I would like to say, because we come from the Caucasus. And so it's a very complicated thing. And so hearing you say that, I think is interesting. I think it's a glimmer of hope. And I think, you were clearly able to, I think it speaks a lot to you and your ability to potentially put aside at that moment, right? In the peak of war, when we're being attacked and invaded and all these different things, like to say, okay, we're putting all that aside and we're keeping our civilians safe on both sides, I think is a testament to who you are and to your professionalism.
Yeah, I think actually when you have a higher purpose, it becomes quite easy to do. There were a lot of situations where there was a lot of political pressure on me to make a different decision, whether it was locally or pressures from outside. But when you have that bigger purpose and you know what your role is and your responsibility is, it's actually just
easy.
It's actually quite easy.
Yeah, because that's your compass.
Yeah.
So you lived through this war. You're head of the aviation committee here. And you also have 2 kids that you bring into this world. At the same time, I remember seeing photos of them just being on the tarmac with you as tiny little newborns, sleeping, during meetings that you were having. How was that, like, from a motherhood perspective? I know you have a very supportive partner, so I'm sure it took, the both of you, but also likely the village around you to make that work. But as a woman who's going through motherhood for the first time and leading this very important, entity through war, how did you handle all of that?
I think the purpose really, really helped me. I didn't feel I had a choice to do it any differently. And I do remember some moments that were particularly difficult for me to do. And one thing was actually moving into the office during the war, not because of the war, but because of COVID. So I have a newborn baby. And at this stage, there are no vaccines. We don't have that much information about what the impact of COVID is. We've seen a lot of scary examples. And here I am with my newborn baby. I need to take care of the Civil Aviation Authority because we're going through war. But at the same time, I'm bringing my baby into an environment with a lot of people where the likelihood of her getting infected is very high. That was a very difficult decision for me because I was like imagining the worst. What if something happens to her? What if she passes away and it was because I brought her into the office? That was a very, very difficult decision, but I did not feel that I had a choice because of the situation the whole country was in. So I felt like protecting our country was also protecting her. So that helped. The second very challenging thing was that I had committed to myself that I'd breastfeed her. And here I am. You can't postpone a meeting because your baby is hungry. So I had to learn to breastfeed in front of men and older men who are definitely not used to this. And, and despite being the strong woman who do whatever she wants, it's not nice. It's not a nice feeling because you know what everyone's thinking. Everyone's uncomfortable around the table. But I overcame it and they overcame it too.
Good for them.
Yes. Yeah.
That's amazing. And what do you think helped them overcome it?
Not having a choice and me being the leader because I didn't give them the option.
But it was authentic. I mean, they weren't just they weren't just dealing with it. It was like it became fine.
It became part of our day-to-day. I mean, the war wasn't 1 or 2 days, So yeah, it became a daily routine for all of us. And obviously, I was showing respect to them. I was like covering and doing whatever I could to make people less uncomfortable. But yeah, I'm very proud of our team during those days. I think we all did things that were unimaginable because, again, we didn't have a choice. We were like, okay, we have this issue. We need to solve it, and we need to solve it together. I think I've never seen our team acting that much as a team, and not just inside the Civil Aviation Authority, but the aviation sector as a whole, and everyone else who were contributing and supporting. There are a lot of tasks we had to solve together.
Mm-hmm. So basically, change is possible in these post-Soviet archaic structures. In small and big ways. Yeah. I mean, this was a big thing for you and for your child. It maybe seems like, okay, maybe weird or small to maybe someone who lives in a country where that's all normal, fine and normal. But I absolutely understand where you're coming from. And I think that modeling things and having these small wins build up to a completely different, reality. If we think more globally, like if we take this example of breastfeeding in front of men who are older and have never dealt with any of that in their professional careers, if we take that example and then start expanding it to all the other things that you did and the change that you brought about, what was the method? Like, what was your approach? So you decided that you want to breastfeed your daughter, and therefore you're going to do it. You're in a way that's acceptable to people. So it's not, it's a gradual process. And you got it done. But you also did a ton of other things, right? So has that been the approach that you use? You just decided, and then you modeled it, and then you gave people time to adapt?
Yes. Everything comes at the end of the day with a decision. So when I made the decision that I'm moving into the office to be available 24/7 to make timely decisions, because timely decisions during a crisis it can be a matter of life and death. It also meant that there are a lot of other processes that had to follow, and it was not postponing meetings, being able to answer the phones in the middle of the night, and doing a lot of other things. So it was the higher purpose of making sure that we did what we were responsible of doing, and was keeping civilian aircraft safe. And it does happen that aircraft get shut down during conflict. So it's not something we haven't seen. And it did happen to Azerbaijan very, very recently. And it happened to Malaysia. It happened to Ukraine.
Why does it happen?
Well, now you bring me to what I'm doing today, because I realized during the war that there are gaps how this is managed, how overflight risk is managed, and I understood that gap is global and not just related to our region. There is a tendency for airlines just to listen to governments. If a government is at war and they don't close their airspace, there has been an assumption, and sometimes still is, by airlines that, well, it's their responsibility to close their airspace during a war if there's danger. If they don't do it, it means there's no danger. And that is not the case at all, because we need to understand government motivation as well. If you're at war and you need to bring supplies into your country, would you then close your airspace? Probably not.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lack of objective information, and this is why I joined the company that I work for now, a UK-based company called Osprey Flight Solutions, and it's a company that has a data-led approach to these decisions. So basically, gathering data from 250,000 sources, understanding if there is a risk, understanding whether there is a change in the data set, and then predicting wars.
So you've been having a lot of fun recently because of all of these different conflicts all over the world. I mean, it's been, I can't imagine, like...
Yeah. And it's been a healing process for me personally, because I'm still healing from what happened in 2020 here. And I'm still like reflecting, was there more we could do? Was there a decision I could have made a day earlier? What impact would that have had? And yeah, so I've taken that reflection and that healing process into the company that I work for now to solve that issue on a global level. So again, it gives me a higher purpose. And I think that really leads anything I do, that there is a higher purpose. Because then it's really not difficult to do the right actions, to be courageous, to challenge status quo when you do have that higher purpose.
And what's ultimately the purpose or the legacy that you're building for yourself, the body of work? You know, what is that for you?
It's keeping people safe and secure. Right now, the focus is on doing that in aviation because I love aviation, but actually that purpose goes beyond aviation. One of the biggest challenges that I've had moving to Armenia is road safety. It's kids not sitting in car seats, like it's people drinking and driving.
Yep, kids sitting in the front of the car.
Yes.
No seatbelts.
So I can feel that passion in terms of keeping people safe and secure, is at its core. But it is mostly in aviation that I work on that purpose, actually implementing, my vision.
And is it still connected to Armenia, or it's more broad now? Like your...
No, it's more broad. I'm solving a global issue, but that issue is also highly relevant for Armenia because of the region we're in. So, I still feel a connection to Armenia.
Mm-hmm.
But I do, like, on the connectivity side, in terms of convincing airlines to overfly Armenian airspace or fly to Armenia, I do that pro bono. So it's not something I've stopped at all.
So you're continuing to work with the government on an advisory level, or no?
Not officially.
No. Okay.
Not officially, but unofficially, yes.
Unofficially.
And it's not only the government. I don't care who it is. Whoever can support...
Make a decision.
Whoever can support making Armenia more connected, I'm here to support. I don't even need anyone to tell me to do it. I might just meet someone over a coffee that I know works for an airline and mention that idea if I see an opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Where do you think Armenia's aviation is going currently? What do you see for us in the next 5 to 10 years?
Depends on what part of aviation. If we're talking connectivity, I think we've seen the development already. Armenia is one of the highest and fastest growing aviation markets in the world, and the capacity at the airport cannot manage this, so something needs to be done there. But if we talk about the institution, the Civil Aviation Authority, unfortunately, I don't have a positive view on it at this stage, at least. And that comes from when you asked, is it possible to change something inside these institutions? What I did not manage to change was the structure of the Civil Aviation Authority. I'd gone as far as understanding that we have a problem. Mm-hmm. It's not working. And the core issue was that it was very difficult to attract talent, technical talent into the authority. You have very limited people. Those that work in the private sector have very, very high salaries, even in Armenia. So how do you convince a pilot to drop, I don't know, a $5,000 to $10,000 salary to go and get, 200,000 drams? It's not realistic. We're just too far off. So I did research globally, which authorities work well and who have less financing issue. Like, all of them have financial issues, but who are more resilient. And I understood that there is a model, a self-financing model, where an authority can charge the private sector, it could be the airline, the airport, for certifying them, not for doing oversight, like checking their safety and security. That cannot be charged, obviously, but certification processes and a lot of other processes can be charged. So running it a bit more like a private company rather than a government institution.
That can do contracts and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. And removing all these restrictions on salaries, that if you work for the government, you have a maximum salary. No, it needs to be competitive if you want
the best talent.
Exactly. So I did prepare such a package. We researched a lot of countries.
To restructure the authority. I see.
Completely restructure it. And to give you an example, so, you can do things incrementally and they'll bring some improvements here and there. And that did take place.
Yes.
But that big disruptive situation, as we were discussing, like to really build it well from scratch and doing it systematically, that did not take place. And as an example, Georgia was far behind Armenia at some point in terms of their level of quality. But what happened was that Saakashvili came in. He literally closed the door to the Civil Aviation Authority, at least the story that I've been told. And people came to work and they couldn't get in to their offices. He locked it down for 3 months. He sent a young team to train them abroad in Toulouse. And then he brought them back and said, you're going to lead the authority. Now it's a self-financed entity. And you need to run this as a business to the highest level of quality. That's disruption.
And it worked.
And they are ahead of us today. I'm not going to say it on all points, but on a lot of important points they are. And yeah, I failed at that. The package was ready. I talked to all the decision makers. I lobbied.
Do you think there's no political will?
There was even a political will on the highest level. I think where it stalled was the worry, okay, if we allow this to happen to the Civil Aviation Authority, then we'll have all the other government entities coming and wanting the same. But for me, it's like, well, if you build a model that works,
why wouldn't you want to?
This is my assumption. I'm not sure this is reality, but this is my assumption why it stalled, because I did actually have the highest level of support on this.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still hoping it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah. And I'm still ready to support if anyone wants to take that responsibility to make this happen.
I hear you. Yeah. I just wonder, how do we stop this cycle? Because it's happening everywhere, and it's like we know it's not good for us, and we just keep pushing this wet noodle across the table because it's always been a wet noodle, and so we're like, okay, we're just going to keep doing this, And I think a lot of the changes that I've seen at different ministries in terms of reforms and initiatives and priorities, I mean, I do think that there's a lot of great things happening in Armenia at this moment.
For sure.
But as you said, they're sort of like, how did you say it? You said it really well. They're not systemic. They're one after the other.
They're dependent on individuals.
They're dependent on individuals, exactly. So the system isn't reforming. And I think that that's really worrying. And when, when people say, oh, do you want to go into politics? And it's like, if it's this, then no. But if it's, totally rethinking, and maybe some of the structures that exist the way that they are have to continue as is. But a lot of these things, I think need to be completely disrupted and rethought. And when I think about the progress Armenia has made with the current systems in place,
it's impressive, actually.
I'm impressed. It's like, wow, like we're actually getting stuff done, and we have these like horrible,
we have passionate people.
Yeah, we do it despite everything that's in place. These systems do not enable us to go faster, to innovate, to be creative. Like we're somehow able to do really interesting things, not everywhere, but in some sectors, despite the systems that hold us back.
Mm-hmm. I realized that some of the biggest achievements I was able to have was because I had a safety net. And I'll explain why. I was like, I'm not here for this low salary because I'm not here to do corrupted practices to live off this salary.
You mean you didn't somehow get a whole plane to yourself during your
Nobody even
tenure?
dared to offer me anything during 4 years because they knew that they would be in big trouble. So I wasn't there for the salary, obviously. I was there for the purpose, but I also knew that I had the safety net. So I did not have the idea I want to become a minister or a vice prime minister or a prime minister. I did not have this purpose to grow politically in the government. That gave me a huge strength. I knew that I could find a job anywhere in the world if I got fired. So I was not afraid of getting fired. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges, that you have very high-level people who actually should and are high-level enough to make very, very big decisions by themselves, but they're playing a safe game. Because if they don't play a safe game, they feel, what if I get fired? What am I going to do? Mm-hmm. If I'm a deputy minister, I want to become a minister. If I'm a minister, I want to become a deputy or a vice prime minister. So when you already have that path and you don't have an alternative, then you play a safe game. Mm-hmm. So it's fully understandable. And that was the biggest strength that I had. Like literally, for me, it was obviously I had promised to improve connectivity for Armenia. So I was like, okay, I have this goal. These are the tasks I need to solve. And I'd go and I would present my case to someone higher and above me, and I'd get nowhere. Then I'd be like, okay, sorry. I go higher, and I go higher. I don't care. I didn't care if they'd be offended, if they had an issue with their egos, as males sometimes do. Because I had that higher purpose. I was like, if I'm not going to reach this goal of improving Armenia's connectivity as I promised to do during my job interview, then I have nothing to do here.
Right.
Then it's just pointless. I can just quit and I can go and I can find another Silicon Valley-based job with a better salary, less headache, and just enjoy my life.
I think you're hitting the nail on its head right now. I think this thing exists everywhere and at every level. When I think about our schools, I mean, decisions are made for literally everyone and everything except for what's best for kids. It's like, well, we have to keep this teacher. Yes, this teacher is yelling at kids and potentially hitting them once in a while, but they're the only breadwinner in their family.
Yeah.
We have to keep this principal because, this principle, it's been in the family for like 30 years, right? And a lot of the decisions that are made, I wouldn't say recently. I think we're doing a good job of moving away from some of these things. Mm-hmm. And first of all, recognizing that this is happening at a governmental level. A lot of these decisions are made because of safety, ego, money, not money in terms of like we're going to make a ton of money, but just like the safety thing that the security thing that you're talking about. And in the education space, it's like, okay, but the person who suffers from this is the child. So you're literally like, we're calling ourselves a country that loves kids, but then when it comes to making decisions that are logical, pragmatic, and take into consideration our key priority, our key stakeholder, which in our case is the kid, nothing else matters, right? Like, and we're not able to do that yet. And I think a lot of the reason why so many of the same people are working in these bureaucracies for decades is because of these things you just mentioned. It's like, well, they've been there for so well, there's always an excuse. But is it in the best interest of your goal? Is it in the best interest of your stakeholder, of the child? You know, in our case, in your case, it's, you know, a completely different group of people and a set of priorities. But if it's not in the best interest, if it's not going to get us to where we need to go, then we need to change something. It's the same for managing teams. Like, there are a lot of great people that I've worked with over the years who I really like on a personal level, but were not good at their job. And if I was just in this mentality of like, well, really like them, you know, all these other factors, like they need to stay. No, we get money from funders to get things done in a certain way and by a certain time frame. And as long as we're doing that, that's great. And if we're not doing that, something needs to change in order to make that work. And sometimes it's letting go of people, bringing new people in. Sometimes it's changing a protocol, a mechanism, a program, whatever it might be.
And it's not easy. We're all humans.
Of course it's not easy. There's a humongous human factor here. But especially if you're in a position of power, I feel like you're being paid or you are given the responsibility to make these difficult decisions. And I think as long as, you know, it's understandable also because we're small, we're familial. There's some of that is also nice, right? Some of these things we also like about ourselves. But I think it is a double-sided coin when it comes to...
We need leaders that can take responsibility, that can articulate a vision and go and get it. It's not just one or two people who should be managing a country. Because it also means that those people don't have the time to strategize. If decisions are not made at lower levels, you simply have a system where leaders, instead of strategizing, instead of thinking about vision and so forth, are solving day-to-day challenges, operational challenges, which should not be solved on their level. And obviously, they'll get overwhelmed. We're all humans. Somehow we do need to develop leaders who are taking responsibility, who are courageous. And for that, we do need to solve the safety net issue, I think. Because if I didn't have my safety net, it's not like I'm better than others. No, I just had that safety net.
Yeah, you had the preconditions for you to be able to make independent choices.
Exactly.
That were important to you. I mean, part of it is probably being a career politician is probably not the right move. You know, being constantly thinking about your next position, your next promotion. It's also understandable because, like, it's human psychology, and
it's not only in Armenia.
It's
a global phenomenon.
Yeah, I mean, I come from the U.S. too, so there's a lot of that obviously happening there. And I do think that that's a major conflict of interest because if you can't make a difficult decision that serves in the best interest of the people you serve, thanks to their tax money, then you shouldn't be in that position.
I actually ended up writing, when I resigned from my position, I wrote a thank you card to the prime minister, and I wrote in the thank you card, "Thank you for not firing me." Because he had all the reasons to. Like, imagine all these people I was circumventing and offending and so forth. Obviously, they weren't happy, and I know that the complaints reached him as well. Yeah, so it was like, thank you for letting me do my job.
Yeah. So, if you had a magic wand, given this conversation and given, your experience clearly, what would you say? How would you what would the spell be? What would you do for the next 10 years to kind of get us out of this situation, which I do think is like a major, major issue?
Mm-hmm. I've really thought deeply about what is the root cause of a lot of our problems. We tend to always blame others, blame the neighbor, like your apartment neighbor, your neighbor next to you on the other side of the border, blame politicians, we are very, very, very good at blaming everyone else.
Except for ourselves.
For ourselves, we don't take personal responsibility of what is going on around us. We're very individualistic. And very often we're not team players, only during crisis. We need to learn to be team players during a day-to-day activity as well. If I had a magic wand, I would teach all of us, including myself, because I'm not perfect too, integrity. And what I mean by integrity, it starts with the small things. It starts from being on time, doing what you said you would do, being responsible. If you have a responsibility, whether you're a leader or whether you're a, kindergarten pedagogue or a school teacher, whoever you are, there are certain responsibilities that you need to live up to, and you need to have the integrity to do so. And if you don't, you should step back.
Mm-hmm.
It's your choice. You need to realize when you're not in integrity. Like small things like being on time with friends, meeting each other, when you're in the traffic, not creating bad situations that will disrupt the whole traffic because you now crashed into someone else and everyone else will be late for work. All that matters. All that has a direct cost to society. And I don't think people realize that if I crash into this person and all traffic stops, I just had a big, big cost, direct cost on society. Mm-hmm. And I'm responsible for that. I don't think people think that way.
No.
And I think if we learn that, there are a lot of problems that would just simply disappear very naturally.
Another angle to this that I think a lot about is like this. I've observed a level of mediocrity in Armenia that's, I think, very destabilizing and ultimately very dangerous to our growth. And I've seen it really across almost every sector. I think what's happening, in my perspective, is the talent pool is constricted. And, if you're sort of good, then you get promoted really, really quickly, especially in the private sector. And you end up having people in positions that are really not supposed to be there. And if we were to compare ourselves to a more saturated market, like, obviously China, India, those are like the big ones, but even like countries in Europe, that same person would never grow as fast or would be at a mid-level, maybe like manager position, whatever. And often in our cases, in our situation in Armenia, these people end up being in like super high level roles, and they're just not equipped. They don't have the education, the knowledge, the skill set, the experience. They haven't been in a competitive market. And so all of a sudden you have companies. First of all, it's very hard for these companies to sustain these people because their salary requests are all of a sudden, it's a bubble. I'm talking about a very specific bubble here.
No.
This is not happening across the board because there's the other aspect of it that you've been talking about where salaries are incredibly low and like people have the experience, but they're not. So I'm just talking about a very specific phenomenon here that I see in the private sector and some in the social impact nonprofit sector, definitely in the tech sector. And what happens is you have our best companies or our best organizations with some pretty mediocre talent making some pretty bad decisions that affect their companies, obviously. But to your point, like they affect our overall national productivity, our ability to generate income, money, value, resources, etc. And so my question, I guess, to you is, like, do we call that out? Do we talk about it? Is that something that you think needs? Have you first of all observed it? I mean, I've observed it. I wonder if you've observed it. And how do we, grapple between these two extremes almost in the workforce? What you described versus what I'm describing right now, which is a little bit of a different sector. But I think it's all coming from also a place of insecurity, fear, not talking about our problems, not recognizing where we are now, where we need to go.
What I have noticed is there is a level of arrogancy, even when you haven't yet reached anywhere in life. So it could be a student with no experience, but having very high expectations of salaries or tasks that they should be solving at that stage. When I remember myself as a student, I mean, yes, I started a bit early because in Denmark you can work from age 13. So basically the day after my birthday, I had a job. But my first job, I was cleaning the toilet, sweeping the floor, and then gradually it was in a bookstore. They allowed me then to sell books, to put books into their places. Then suddenly, gradually, I was writing salaries to staff. I had a certain development, but I didn't start on the top. I started with cleaning toilets. And here, how? Me? Cleaning toilets? Why? How? Why should I? And that's very surprising. I'm like, you're, I don't know, 15, 16. You should be cleaning toilets. What else should you be doing, So that angers me a bit because, and that comes from their families telling them that it's embarrassing instead of telling them it's something you should be proud of. You should be proud of having a job when you're, I think the legal age is 16 here, right? Let's say 16 to keep it legal. You should be proud of having a job. At that age, it's not important exactly what that job is. It is that you're able to go and find a job and keep a job and learn from it. That's exactly what you need to do at that age. But yeah, what I see happening is, no, I don't want to work because, this is not good enough for me. And yes, it's not only within students, that also replicates itself later in life. And all those same people, when they move out of Armenia, they sweep floors, they clean toilets.
That's the question. Why? Why is it? Because there are no other Armenians to embarrass them for their job?
I think so. I think, unfortunately, we have a society where we like, as I said, blame each other. We like telling each other what we're doing wrong, that we should be embarrassed. Like, we often use the word with kids as well, amota. Why are we using that word that often? I just don't get that. That's really, really wrong. And it also teaches kids not to be courageous, because what if I fail? How are people going to look at me? And everything starts from that really, really young age. And I'm sure if I didn't clean that toilet and I didn't have that foundation, I might not have had the courage to say yes to that job later on.
Of course, yeah. I'm sure you're teaching your kids these things now.
They're not good cleaners. I really need to do something about that. Yeah.
The other day, my husband and I saw our 5-year-old, almost 5-year-old, start cleaning dishes. And we're just kind of looking at each other. And he's cleaning them, and half of them are soapy, half of them have still food on the plates, but he's like stacking them to dry. And we didn't say anything, and we said, good job, that you're doing such a great job. And then he went to sleep, and then we like actually cleaned the dishes after him. But I agree. I think these things start very young, and I think our generation is doing things differently. I don't think we have a critical mass yet, but I do think that people are doing things differently. I see a lot of young kids in cafes working as waiters or in stores. So I think a lot of that is starting, and I just really hope to see more of it, because I think it builds the kind of, as you've been referring throughout this conversation, the kind of courage, the kind of resilience, the kind of independence and agency that I think Armenia really, really needs to take this next step. I
do have a worry, though, because I've realized that a lot of my capabilities to reach my goals come from the fact that I didn't have much support when I was younger. So, we moved when I was 5, almost 6. And I remember at age 7, I was translating taxation papers from Danish to Armenian for my parents. I don't know how accurate it was, but I was doing it. I remember my cat getting lost, and I was printing flyers, going around and sticking them to walls, and even calling the radio and asking them to talk about my cat. So, and I was only 7, and that comes from that my parents at that stage
depended on you.
Depended on me. They weren't able to support me, do things for me. So I never asked them for help in these situations. And that taught me a lot of things. It became very useful later in life. So my biggest worry right now is that I'm not able to give that challenge to my kids. Their life is completely different.
Yeah.
They're traveling the world. Today, my daughter was like, when are we going to visit all countries in the world? I'm like, this is not a normal question.
I think it might be for your daughter specifically.
Yeah, that's true.
But I can tell you from my perspective, my dad's not Armenian, and he was raised by, on a farm. There were 7 kids. Everyone had chores. Everyone had to work labor jobs growing up. And my father is an interesting man, to put it briefly. But I do remember explicitly him not doing things for me on purpose.
Yeah.
And me being so upset and saying, well, Guyana's dad does X for her, and you won't do this one thing for me. And he's like, you're a big girl, you can figure it out. I'm here to support you if you fall, but this is on you. And literally anything, if I wanted to schedule something, if I wanted to get something done, if I wanted to get my driver's license at 16 years old, it was all about, you want it, I support you, you figure it out. Find the school, call them, arrange it, go, take the classes, pass the test, And so, and it was really annoying and almost painful and hurtful as it was happening to me. But I do think it built independence within me. And I think a lot of that kind of parenting, which my mother never understood, right? It was so hard for her to understand that, and she would tell my father, like, even when Larisa is, 70 and I'm 100 years old, I'm still going to like take care of her and tell her what she can and cannot do, and that she should wear something warmer when she goes outside, etc. But my father's upbringing was, when you're 18, you're on your own. You can do whatever you want. You carry the responsibilities of your life. You have to earn your own income. I mean, he definitely helped, but there was an expectation that I had to be on my own at some point soon, right? And it was really, really hard, and it really sucked because like there were people who had everything and they didn't have to work as hard. They didn't have to worry as much as I did about the next day, about meeting rent and doing all these other things. But I absolutely think now that in retrospect, it was probably one of the reasons why I had the courage, I had the audacity, probably the naivete, but whatever, the basic skill sets to say, okay, I have this idea, I'm going to do it, and things will be difficult, but that's fine. That's like part of the process, So anyway, I'm glad we're here today. I'm glad that we had this conversation. I'm really thankful to you for all the things that you've done for Armenia in one of our most darkest chapters. And I'm really excited about what you're doing now and where you're going next, and how that also helps Armenia now and in the future. People often ask me, are you in Armenia like forever? And I'll say, I'm in Armenia as long as I feel like I'm contributing value to the country. I have nothing against people working in global organizations, leaving for a period of time, coming back, as long as the priority at some point is to bring that back somehow as value to our country.
And actually,
and to
it's
our
interesting
future.
you mentioned this. Just a final point. When I shared the vision of creating connectivity for Armenia, I had a deeper purpose, which was not aviation related, and it is when you live in a country where you can't travel, and you don't have that opportunity, you feel like you're in a prison. And as soon as you get one opportunity to leave, you leave and you don't come back. So, and then also when you don't have this opportunity to come back, you also don't bring new skill sets and new energy and a new vision that you need in order to be able to do whatever is needed to develop Armenia. So my deeper vision was exactly that: create so much connectivity, competitive prices, so a whole new group of people would have the opportunity to travel, and wouldn't feel that traveling would mean leaving forever, but it would be maybe leaving for a couple of days, maybe for a job, that would give them some experience, and then the end goal was always coming back and contributing to the development of Armenia.
That's beautiful. Thanks for that. I think you've succeeded. I think the what we're seeing now is a ripple effect of the work that you laid down.
So time will show. Yeah.
I think time has shown and will continue to show. Tatevik, thank you so much for being with us, and I truly wish you the best. And I think I'll see you again soon in this space.
Thank you so much.